Hello and welcome to Automate with Red Hat Ansible. I'm Daniel Newman, Principal Analyst and Founding Partner at Futurum Research, and I'm going to be your host for this high-impact series of short 8-minute interviews where we're going to be talking about the complexities and opportunities of automation. In this episode, I'm going to be talking with Jamie Beck, and we're going to be talking about the security side of automation. Jamie Beck, welcome to Automate with Red Hat Ansible.
Thanks, Daniel.
It's great to have you here. Now, to start off, this show is all about high impact. It's all about quick takes and getting to the bottom of the opportunities that exist for companies that are looking at automation. You, as someone who's leading a practice, who's in the security space, have so much knowledge and such a wealth, and I'm really excited to have this, conversation with you. But as I always like to start off, talk a little bit and introduce me and everybody out there to your role at Red Hat and Ansible and the specifics of what's going on in the security space.
Sure. So prior to coming to Red Hat, I was working with some cybersecurity companies, and then I came to Red Hat and started working with the Ansible team in automation, and then it was a natural fit for me to go on ahead and start working with the security automation team here within the Ansible team.
So a practitioner now working for Red Hat Ansible. Let's start there. What is Red Hat Ansible security automation?
So when we're thinking about security automation, we're really looking at how to automate various different tools and processes around security. So there's a lot of very manual things that can start to get kind of onerous for people, and they can start to really bog down your day-to-day. And so what it allows people to do is automate a lot of different tools and processes in order to help to alleviate some of the stress that might come from having to do the same things over and over and over again, and it frees your day-to-day up to do things that are actually more strategic.
Yeah, this is a big topic, though. Security comes up every day, and I think a lot of people, when they think about automation, they tend to think more about applications, they think more about maybe IT operations, but security is a rapidly growing space, and I have to imagine that is, becoming more and more time-consuming for you, and something that probably brings new interesting threats every single day.
Yeah, it's always evolving, and as we see with pretty much daily, there's something that comes out in the news around various different vulnerabilities that are being identified. And what Ansible Security Automation allows you to do is really pull together what we call islands of automation. So when you look at all the different things that can be automated, you can automate endpoint protection, you can automate your SIM processes, you can put all these things together by using Ansible and stitch that together so that if you have your security automation center, you can really patch together all of these different things that are very disparate and have them all working together via Ansible and automate a lot of those things so that you're not having to deal with doing that every day.
So obviously the growing threats are more and more something that the leadership, CISOs of the organization, and of course their direct reports are paying more and more attention to. Why is it so critical that CISOs are taking the opportunity of automation more seriously?
Sure. So there was a study that showed that security practitioners can only respond to about 5% of attacks. And that's something, when you're looking at it from a leadership perspective, from a CISO perspective, that means 95% of these attacks aren't really getting identified. And so what Ansible can do is allow you to stitch together these islands of automation that might be various different vendors that we've got partnerships with, that we can then stitch those things together. So we know that lots of companies have many, many different vendors that they're working with to cover their security operations center. And so as we're able to connect all of these things via automation, it allows for people in a leadership position to look at across all the different vendors that they're using, and they can use Ansible certified content with our certified partners to then stitch together those vendors and have your security operations center sort of working together as one. And then using Ansible, you have a lot of different readouts that you can see in order to go through and look at from the leadership position how things are being automated and which things need to be spun up and spun down. And it really gives CISOs the opportunity to have a holistic view of what's going on with their security automation center.
Which is a lot, because when you think about 95% that are not being attended to, automation also provides the opportunity, threat detection, automate that process, put a lot of focus on that 5%, and obviously figure out which are the 1% or less that are real threats that automation can't handle, and then you can put a lot more of your resources that way. Something you said of interest to me was all about these partnerships and collaborations and stitching together. Clearly, CISOs and the IT leaders need to be prioritizing security, but it sounds like what you're doing with Red Hat Ansible is you're building connectors, working with partners to make this process simpler. So it's not just using Red Hat Automation or Red Hat Ansible, it's really about taking all your tools, and then the automation is the stitch together, as you called it. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that. Talk about some of the key partnerships.
Sure. So some of the key partnerships we have are CyberArk. We have partnerships with Cisco. We have partnerships with Checkpoint. And so it's very different tools that are being used within your security operations center that you can automate with. And so as we look at partnering with these teams, and if you go out to the Ansible website, ansible.com, and look at the integrations, you'll see that we've got a number of integrations with big security companies, IBM included as well, where we've got pre-built content that you can then plug into your automation, and you can then automate these things based off of this pre-built content. So the content is supported both by Red Hat and by the partners. So it gives you the peace of mind as you're trying to automate these things that you're supported both from the Red Hat end and from the vendor end. And all these things are pre-built and out on the website for people to consume and to use. So it really makes it to where you don't even have to be an expert in coding with Ansible because it's already been built for you.
Yeah, that streamlining is very important. We all know that resources in IT departments and in security organizations are always limited, and of course more and more investment is going into that area. But these leaders, that's oftentimes what ends up putting them on their heels on threats, is that they don't have enough resources in terms of the software and applications. They don't have enough resources in terms of people, even if they have the software. It sounds like you guys are giving the tools, helping put together a way for companies to overcome that. Now, without getting too specific about customers and stuff, because I know security tends to be kind of stealthy in terms of how much you can share about the work you're doing. But can you share just a little bit about the time saving? How much efficiency have you seen or heard through some of maybe your direct interactions with some of your clients?
Actually, a really interesting story came up just recently where we were working with a customer and they were only doing network automation. And so as they were starting to learn more about how Ansible works, our team was talking to them about security automation as well. And they said, we don't even know that Ansible can do security automation. So they were able to then connect those two teams for kind of a cultural transformation in order to say, okay, well now we've got our network team talking to our security team where they weren't really doing that before, and that was through automation. So if you can imagine the efficiencies that are being driven through connecting these two departments within this big company that weren't even talking to each other, we saw Ansible as something that actually caused that cultural transformation within that company.
Now, that's some really great advice, and for everybody out there, I imagine just hearing about some of those savings probably warmed a few hearts out there. If nothing else, it probably put a few people at ease that are maybe considering making these investments or in the process of using Red Hat Ansible or other automation tools, right? And big thing, big deal. I love to finish up the show with a piece of advice. You're working with a lot of companies, you're talking to a lot of these leaders, both the CISOs themselves and their teams. What's the big piece of advice you give to them about getting started with security automation?
Well, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different resources that people can go about. Part of it is looking at our getting started materials that can be accessed on Ansible.com, because that really shows you that Ansible is a very simple language, a human readable language based on YAML, that then they can look at not overcomplicating what their security teams are doing. It's really all about simplifying what's going on in your security operations center. And when you're looking at it from a leadership perspective or from like a departmental head perspective, you're looking at simplifying your team's day-to-day, giving them more time back to be strategic, and not having them spend all day, every day, just working through manual processes that just don't make it very fun to do your job. So it's really taking Ansible and we talked a little bit about that cultural transformation, but also giving your employees the tools that they need in order to make their day-to-day more enjoyable and focus on more strategic security initiatives so that they're not just bogged down with just pressing a button every day.
Jamie Beck, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Automate with Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. Please subscribe to hear and watch all of these episodes. To learn more about Red Hat Ansible, you can follow the company on Twitter @Ansible or visit the website ansible.com. For more on Futurum Research, follow @Futurum Research on Twitter or on the web at futurumresearch.com.